Namaskaram. A warm welcome to the second part of the series on the great Chola temples. For those who have missed to see the first part, I would request you to go to the ATHARVA Forum YouTube channel and then have a look at the lecture. And do subscribe to ATHARVA Forum so that you can't miss the remaining part of the lecture. And also some of the great talks by eminent scholars in the ATHARVA Forum. I'll anyway start with a glimpse of what we have seen in the first part. We started talking about the later Chola era, the revival of Cholas by the Vijayalaya Chola, and then how his son Aditya Chola undertook a massive temple building activity along with the other things. He has built a number of temples along the banks of Kaveri, which are basically starting the era of granite temples and converting the existing temples, which were there since ancient times, the temples which are made up of sand and wood and so on and so forth. Aditya Chola started converting those temples into the stone temples. And that activity continued through generations, even by his son Parandaga Chola. Now, Rajaraja Chola, who came in their line, in fact, took this temple building into a next level altogether. While he did continue that tradition of building smaller granite temples, he started building a huge temple in his capital, Thanjavur, the great Brigadiswarar Temple. We did look at the various aspects of that Brigadiswarar Temple, Thanjavur, in our last part, the first of the grand Chola temples. Rajaraja, in fact, converted that temple as some sort of an institute altogether, not only for a religious purpose, but also like a treasury, like a granary. There are so many things which were associated with the great temple of Thanjavur, built by Rajaraja Chola. This is what we have seen in the last part of our lecture. So today what we will see is the second of those grand temples, which is built by none other than the son of Rajaraja Chola, the Rajendra Chola. So the temple built by him is called as Gangaikonda Cholisvarar, but the deity has the same name, Brigadiswara or Peruvudayar, which is similar to what his father Rajaraja has built in Thanjavur. Now, let us look at the history of Rajendra to start with. It is not easy to be born to a very illustrious father. We all know that, right? So every time there is something undertaken by the son, there is always a comparison of what his father has done in relation to that. To be born to a king like Rajaraja, because Rajaraja is not only a great warrior who expanded this kingdom to the various parts of the country. Rajaraja is a multidimensional personality. He is a great administrator. He has revamped the entire Chola administration to a greater extent. He instituted this land measuring. He put a number of irrigation measures so that the cultivable land gets increased. So there are a lot of things Rajaraja has done from an administrative perspective. Then he was a great religious man. He built a lot of temples throughout, contributed more towards the Tamil literature, especially on the Bhakti literature. It is due to his effort, the Tirumurais were found from the Chidambaram temple, and then he ensured that they were properly categorized by Nambiyandar Nambi, Saiva saint. So if you look at Rajaraja, he has put his mark in multiple areas. But to the credit of Rajendra, he in fact emulated his father in all this and sort of exceeded in many of those areas. As a warrior, obviously he was a great king. He went all the way up to the Ganges in the north as an expedition, defeated a number of kings on the way, and put the mark like Samudragupta in the. Similarly, he undertook an expedition across the seas to the Southeast Asia, to the mighty Srivijayan Empire. They were very strong they were a very strong naval power. So he went and then defeated them. So he put a mark as a warrior. But apart from that, what he has done is he's sort of done the administration of his father, or he has exceeded the administrative power of his father in multiple areas, which one of these we will see in the same lecture. and he was a great religious man. He built a number of temples like his father, and he was also a very great Tamil literature enthusiast. So he sort of uh, outnumbered his father in multiple areas. But at the same time, what he has done is he never sort of tried to reduce the kind of adulation his father got in these areas. Um, let us look at one of the administrative changes which Rajendra has actually done during the Sangam era, which is the BCE part of the Tamil history. Urayur was the capital of Cholas, but later, when the Chola revival came about in the 9th century by Vijayalaya Chola, they shifted their means they had their capital in Tanjavur. They didn't want Urayur as their capital. So Vijayalaya made Tanjavur as their capital and started ruling from there. And there was another capital which he has kept as a secondary one, which is called as Palayarai near Kumbakonam. But that is only a secondary capital. But the primary capital remained as Tanjavur for about 150 years. Then Rajendra came and then he built these massive temples. So there are a lot of inflow of people from various parts of the country to this city of Tanjavur. Even for the temple itself, we know that about 400 people as dancers he has sort of recruited from various other temples in Tamil Nadu. There were other artisans who came in. And the military might of Cholas actually started increasing. So there is a lot of people who from the military who camped in Tanjavur. So the city couldn't take that load. What Rajendra has actually done is that, like the modern design, he thought that it will be worthwhile to have a new capital for the expanding kingdom of Cholas. And then he chose this place called as Gangaikonda Cholapuram. Now this place is on the northern banks of the river Kollidam, Kolarun as we call in English. The reason why he has chosen is that while he is not leaving the core of Chola country, he will have a very good oversight on the northern part of the country where there are a lot of troubles from Western Chalukyas, very specifically. So he thought that it would be worthwhile to move the capital to a northern part of the country in Gangaikonda Cholapuram. The other aspect is the increasing naval power of Chola, where their naval base remained in Nagapattinam. And from Nagapattinam, the boats can easily come through the Kolarun River, the Kollidam River inland. And Gangaikonda Cholapuram being very near to that river, it is very easy from an administrative perspective to look after the naval power also. So there are multitude of reasons why Rajendra chose to build a new city called as Gangaikonda Cholapuram. Now, Gangaikonda Cholapuram is a planned city. It's a planned city like what we see in Chandigarh, etc. in today's world. From his ascension to the as a Chola ruler, about 10 years it took for him to undertake some major expeditions towards north to win over the Pala kings in the near the Ganges, as well as the naval expedition to the Southeast Asia. Now, during these 10 years, he has started planning this city and then slowly moving the people from Tanjavur to the newly built capital of the Gangaikonda Cholapuram. The evidence of him building the Gangaikonda Cholapuram is actually found in one of his copper plate inscription called as Esalam copper plate, which mentions that Rajendro Vyadidasa Gangaikonda Cholapuram Satkunanidhi Atmana Kridayam. There is a sloka which is there in the Esalam plates, which says that it was Rajendra who had built the city of Gangaikonda Cholapuram. Now, from that time onwards, it remained as the capital of Chola for around about 250 years till the Cholas were completely annihilated by the Pandyas. So, if you compare various capital of Cholas, it was Gangaikonda Cholapuram which remained as the as a capital for a longest period of time. While he shifted the capital from Tanjavur, what Rajendra has actually done is the various streets of Tanjavur is taken as it is, in the sense that he has named the cities of Gangaikonda Cholapuram also, like what you can see in Tanjavur. There is this Vidyadhara street, there is this Mummudi Chola street, which were there in Tanjavur, and the same streets were there in the Gangaikonda Cholapuram also. So he ensured that the continuity is not lost. But what you see today as Gangaikonda Cholapuram is a very small part of what used to be the capital of Cholas in their peak time. Now, there were a number of places nearby, like Maligai Medu, Veeracholanallur, Manmalai, Sokkanatha so on and so forth. They were all part of Sokkapallam, rather. They were all part of the Gangaikonda Cholapuram city of the Golden Age. And the outskirts or the suburbs, as we call it, as Sengamedu, Kollapuram, and those were in fact the suburbs of the great city. So it was actually a very big city. But later, due to multiple invasions, the infighting between the kings, most of the parts of the city were destroyed. And what actually stands today is in fact nothing. If you go there, you will never see a trace of a great city being there in the Gangaikonda Cholapuram. But recently, the Archaeological Survey of India started taking a lot of efforts to excavate the things from the olden city. And we can see that the old, the remnants of the old palace of Rajendra Chola, the walls were all actually found during the recent excavation in Maligai Medu. And there were a number of artifacts, including the beads, the Chinese porcelain, and so many other artifacts which were found during the excavation, which sort of proves that this was one time a very bustling city. And it has got links with the trading links with multiple countries, because we can see those artifacts found during the excavations. And as we speak today, the third part of the excavation started a couple of days back, and it's currently underway. And hopefully, we should see more and more of newer evidences of such a great city which was existing once upon a time. I will probably sum it up with one last thing, which is an evidence of how you know that things were shifted from Tanjavur to Gangaikonda Cholapuram. There was an inscription of Parandaga Chola, who was the son of Aditya Chola. When Parandaga was ruling Tanjavur, he gave a grant to a trading guild called as Valanjiyar Ainuttuvar. So what he has actually done is he has given them to tax-free grants, so that they can occupy a particular street in Tanjavur and need not pay any some 2 or 3 types of taxes, but they can also sort of collect some amount from those who are coming and then selling things in their particular street. So he has given a grant. That particular street where this trading guild was operating is called as Irumudi Chola. When they shifted the capital to Gangaikonda Cholapuram, those people of those trading guild, the members of the guild, took that entire inscription and then put it in the newer capital as a continuity, that this particular grant given by the Chola continues even in the new capital, that the tax-free benefits they were enjoying during the reign of Parandaga Chola in Tanjavur is still continuing during Rajendra Chola's time. So when they were trying to do, when they were doing the excavation recently, this particular inscription, which is actually a slab, was found by the ASI and it was restored. So that clearly evidences that the capital and the entire traders, army men, artisans, everybody was shifted lock, stock and barrel from Tanjavur to the city of Gangaikonda Cholapuram. Now, obviously, being a very religious person, Rajendra wanted to build a temple in the newer capital. And what he wanted to is, he wanted to bring the holy water from the Ganges and then consecrate this particular temple. And during the Ganges expedition, this instruction was sent to his commander. And the Tiruvalangadu copper plates mentioned that they've made a bridge of elephants across the Ganges and then took that holy water in the pots and then carried it on the backs of the elephants. That's what the Tiruvalangadu copper plates say. So like that, the Ganges were sort of brought. And to respect that the holiness of the water, what Rajendra has done is he traveled all the way from here, from the Chola Desam to the Godavari banks, and then he took or he received these holy water and then came back all the way from the banks of Godavari to this new capital of Gangaikonda Cholapuram. And then he consecrated this particular temple, which is called as Gangaikondacholisvarar. And he poured the water into a newer newly built lake, which is called as Solaganga Pereri, which is still there in the outskirts of the Gangaikonda Cholapuram. It was a very huge lake to provide the water needs of the people of the newly built city. So that is the kind of history and legacy this particular temple has. What happened after Rajendra Chola's era is actually a very sad part of the entire history. His three sons obviously patronized this particular temple, and post Chola era, even the Pandyas took care of the city and the temple in a great way. You can see a number of inscriptions of Pandyas in the Gangaikondacholisvarar Temple. But after that, the invasion of Malik Kafur actually made a huge dent on the temple. Most part of the temple were sort of demolished by the invaders. Subsequently, when the Vijayanagara kings came, rebuilt some part of the temple. They could rebuild some part of the temple. Then it went to one of the Jamindars nearby called as Udayarpalayam Jamindars. They were chieftains who were ruling this particular area. So they were looking after the temple for some time. But they got defeated by the French troops when the Carnatic Wars started happening in the south of India. So it was between the French and British, with some proxy kings ruling on either side. So French, who defeated Udayarpalayam, eventually took over the entire temple, and they made this temple as their army base. So that during that particular process, they again demolished many parts of the temple. They constructed their own places for keeping their artillery and gun, etc. So I think the temple totally went to oblivion during that particular phase. Later, when British sort of took the lead and then took over the entire region, they didn't do much to the temple. But the problem was, in 1863, they were decided to build a dam near the Kolaroo River called as Lower Anakat. So what they did, they took the granite from the temple for building that particular dam. So again, the temple went through another round of demolition in the hands of British. So there was this note in the Indian Antiquary, and then I would just read it as verbatim to see what exactly happened. Speaking of the noble temple of Gangaikonda Cholapuram, it must not be omitted that when the lower Kolaroo Anakat was built, the structure was dismantled of a larger part of the splendid granite sculptures which adorned it, and the enclosing wall was almost wholly destroyed in order to obtain materials for the work. The poor people did their utmost to prevent the destruction and spoliation of a venerable edifice by the servants of a government that would show no little to it, but of course without success. They were only punished for contempt. The people who were trying to protest, they were punished for contempt. Promise was made, indeed, that a wall of brick would be built in place of the stone wall that was pulled down. But unhappily, it must be recorded that the promise never been fulfilled. So this is what is written in the Indian Antiquary note. So unfortunately, what we see today is only about 30 to 40% of a great temple which was existing, which has now come to this particular sorry state of affairs. After centuries, right, after this British rule, there were no idea about who was actually built this temple. It may be surprising to note that, because most part of the temple was actually demolished and the inscriptions were all gone. It will be surprising for you to see that there was not a single inscription of Rajendra Chola in the temple, which is in fact built by him. There was actually an inscription of his son Rajendra Chola, which talks about Rajendra made some grants to the temple. No proof that this temple was in fact made by Rajendra Chola. So this is similar to what we see in Thanjavur Brigadiswarar temple also, where for a long time there were a lot of legends towards the temple, that the temple was built by one Karikala Chola or one Kirimikanda Chola, who actually built it because there was some curse on him, and so on and so forth. There was a lot of legends, and it was a German archaeologist, Hulsch, who actually came to the Thanjavur temple and then found an inscription, deciphered it, and then told the entire world that this temple was actually built by an emperor called as Rajaraja Chola. But at least there was an inscription of Rajaraja in Thanjavur. But in Gangaikonda Cholapuram, there was no inscription of Rajendra. So again, there were a lot of speculation of who exactly built this temple. And in 1987, in a place called as Esalam in the north Tamil Nadu, a set of copper plates were found, which is actually belong to Rajendra Chola I. There is an interesting sloka, some of which means one part of which I have actually read earlier. That sloka confirmed without doubt that this particular temple was built by Rajendra. I'll just read it again. So it says that Rajendro Vyadidasa Gangaikonda Cholapuram Satkuna Nidhi Atmana Kridayam Tannama Vabarana Mageswarasya Bhakta Tat Padayuga Parijata Bringa. So it actually says that Rajendra, who was an epitome of good deeds, made a temple in the Gangaikonda Cholapuram for Lord Shiva. And then he was like going around the feet of Shiva. The feet was compared with Parijata flower. The Parijata, the flower-like feet of Lord Shiva, as a bee, he went around Lord Shiva. So that was a devotion of Rajendra towards Shiva. And then that particular sloka or the plate which confirmed that this Gangaikonda Cholapuram temple was indeed built by Rajendra Chola. We will look at the temple from a bird's eye point of view, and then get into the temple and look at the various structural aspects of the temple as it stands today. If you look out the temple from outside, you will not see any gopuras. In Tanjavur, again, if you remember, there were two gopuras, the Keralandagan gate as well as the Rajarajan gate, Rajarajan Vail. But here you will not see any such gopuras. And what it is reminding is the second gopura's base is what you can see from outside as you enter into the temple. The temple is, if you turn towards the left of the temple, there were two smaller shrines, of which the first shrine was completely demolished. It was of Somaskanda Murti. Somaskanda is Uma Skanda, where the Shiva along with the Uma Devi and Skanda were actually as a deity, was housed in the shrine during Rajendra's time, but that particular shrine was completely demolished. So if you go bit up, you will see another small shrine called as Ten Kailayam, the South Kailasa temple. On the back of it, you will see a temple of Ganapati, which is of later time. So you circumambulate and then come to the northern side of the Prakara. You will see another similar shrine of this Tenkaila in the north also, which is called as North Kailasa, Vada Kailaya. So there were two Kailasa temples, Tenkailaya and Vada Kailaya shrines on both sides. So this is some sort of a style which Cholas have sort of formed. You will see a similar structure in Thiruvayur temple, where there were two Kailaya temples, the Tenkailaya and Vada Kailaya. The Tenkailaya was built by the queen of Rajaraja Chola, Ulagama Devi, and the Vada Kailaya temple was built by Rajendra's wife, Panjamanva Devi. So something similar could have happened here as well as the two Kailaya temples were built probably by their wife or the sons of Rajendra Chola. That was the guess by many of the historical researchers here. Now moving again into the northern Prakara, you will see the Chandigeswara temple, which is there in many of the Shiva temples on the side of it. There is a well called a Simmakeni because there is a large lion sculpture which is there next to that particular well, and that's why it is called as a Simmakeni. The center has the great temple or the great shrine of Lord Shiva, called as Brihadishwara. So this is basically the overall outline of this particular great temple. If you see, it's a rectangular shaped area or the base this temple has, similar to what you see in Tanjavur, but the rectangle has two protrusions on each side to make way for these two shrines of South Kailaya and North Kailaya temple. What we should do is to get into the temple and look at each of those structures. In great temples of Cholas, you will typically see two towers. Like what I have mentioned, in Tanjavur, we have seen two towers. The next one, which is Dharashuram, there are also two towers, which was built by the Rajaraja II. And Even in the Gaṅgaikoṇḍa Temple at Tribhuvanam, you will see two gopuras there. But here you will see that they are absent, but it doesn't mean that it was not built. The first tower obviously was built and it was in place for quite some time, but it was demolished by the invaders. And then the entire outer wall was broken by British to build the dam. So what you see now is only two concrete structures on both sides, which actually shows that there were a tower some time back. So that is only which is remaining currently. Now going further, you will see the entrance which housed the second tower. Now luckily, here the base of the tower is somehow remaining intact, but the entire top is gone. There was a researcher called as James Harley who came during the 19th century to the temple. And in his notes, he has mentioned that he has seen a 3 or 4 story gopura here in a very dilapidated state. So, which means that there was a gopura even in 19th century in this temple. Gopura is also gone, but you can see that he has taken effort to photograph that particular gopura. And the book is there in the British library. And the researcher Kodavai Subramaniam has taken effort to bring that photograph and publish it in his book. You can see this is the old tower, which is there in the second gate of the temple. Now you will see two Dwarapalakas on both sides, which is actually not part of this particular base in the second gopura. They were brought from somewhere and then they put it so that there is at least some idea that they were there some time back. And you will see the base of the gopura doesn't have any sculptures whatsoever. It is very, very plain. And if you sort of get into that, you will see a Dvajastambam, which typically you will see in any temple, a Balipidam, and the Nandi or Rishabha one by one, again, straight against the main Sannidhi of the temple. Now, all these three are later constructions. Only the Pidas were there, like the places where they are supposed to be there were there. But recently, they have built a Dvajastambam. And the Rishabha was built during the 19th century. It's a makeshift Rishabha they have made, but now I think they have renovated that. So that was also a later addition. And even the Balipida, many of the parts of Balipida was renovated. So that is what you can see currently. But the beauty is that given that even though they have been built in the places where they were supposed to be there earlier, symmetrical position, this Gangaikonda Cholisvarar Temple was built by a sculptor called as Nitya Vinoda Perundachan. Now, who is this Nitya Vinoda Perundachan? He was the Sishya of Rajaraja Kunjaramalla Perundachan, who built the Tanjavur Temple. So the Guru built the Tanjavur Brilliance Temple, the Sishya built the Gangaikonda Cholisvarar Temple. So here you will see that kind of an architectural marvel and the geometrical precision of how he has aligned the entire thing together. We will see more of it as we move into the temple. Now, the second gopura, as I see, it was about 68 to 46 feet in height and length. With the entry is about 12 feet. That's a gap they have provided into for getting into the temple. Next shrine which we encounter as we go through the southern Pragara is the South Kailasa temple. Now, this particular temple could have had a Shivalinga earlier, right? It's Kailasa temple, so there must have been a Shivalinga inside the temple. But the temple is in a very bad condition. So the sanctum doesn't have any deity now. What you see is only a mandapa before the shrine and the sanctum of the shrine. On the side walls, what we call as a koshta, there are not many deities which could have been there earlier, but were broken by the invaders. So that is what you will see in the South Kailasa temple. All you see is Dakshinamurti, and in the west you will see a Lingodbhava Murti. So both are only there, and as I said, the sanctum doesn't have any deity. So that is the current status of the South Kailaya temple. Now, if you go all round and then come to the North Kailaya temple, compared to the South Kailaya, this has been preserved very well. Now, what happened is, here also the sanctum didn't have a Shivalinga currently, but it was converted as the temple of goddess Brihannayaki at a later period of time, which is very evident from the fact that the Amman, or the Brihannayahi was brought from somewhere and then installed in the Garbhagriha of the North Kailayam temple. It was basically a Shiva temple converted as a Devi temple. The early Cholas didn't have the practice of building a Devi shrine along with the Shiva shrine, and then they were all later additions. Even in Tanjavur, we have seen the Devi shrine was built by Jadavarman Sundara Pandya. Similarly, here also, it could have been built by Pandyas. So that was the guess. Now, the shrine as such is in a very good condition, and there were Ganesha, Nadaraja, Brahma, Bhairava, Ardhanariswara, Durga are all there in the posta of a typical Shiva temple. As you go along, you will see Dakshinamurti on the left side, and then Durga on the northern side. So those were all there in the North Kailasha shrine, as you see that. And then there were images of Saraswati, there were images of Gajalakshmi, which were there in the walls of the Northern Kailasha temple. So I think this is one good thing which has happened, where the temple is very well preserved and then maintained by the Archaeological Society of India. Now, let us now look into the main shrine of the Gangaikonda Cholisvarar. Now, if you see that, the temple has a Mukha Mantapa. Mukha Mantapa is the Mantapa where you enter the temple. And there is a Maha Mantapa, which is basically the second part of the Mantapas as you move into the sanctum. Then you will have the sanctum or the Vimana on the top of the sanctum. And there is a small Mantapa before the sanctum itself, which is called as a Mukha Mantapa of the sanctum. It can be also called as Artha Mantapa also. These are the three Mantapas before you get into the sanctum of the main temple, as you see in the picture. Now, if you see itself, you'll see that the Mukha Mantapa and the Maha Mantapa, the side walls of them, doesn't have any deities, which is not the practice in which many of the temples were built. And this reason is both mandapas were demolished and then reconstructed by the Vijayanagara kings at the later point of time. So they tried to make whatever is available and then build these two mandapas, which is why it appears very plain into the eyes. Even the stones there were actually made, at random. So you will see there is, it is not actually properly meshed up to bring the old glory back. But anyway, as such, these two mandapas were existing. They were on steps straight. The steps were on both sides. So you have to climb into the Mukha Mandapa through the side steps only. So that is also what you see in the picture. When you circumambulate the temple, on the back of the sanctum, you will see a Lingodbhava deity on the back of any Shiva temple. And some Shiva temples have Vishnu also. So here in Gangaikonda Cholapuram, interestingly, both Lingodbhava and Vishnu were present in the backside of the sanctum. So that is another uniqueness in which this particular temple is created. In the back of the Garbhagriha, you will see a shrine of Subramanya also. When I was talking about Rajendra, while he tried to emulate his father, took care not to sort of over exceed what his father did. That's one line I have mentioned earlier. Now, an example of that is the Vimana, as you see in the picture. Now, if you look at Tanjavur temple, the Vimana was of height of 216 feet tall. So, if Rajendra would have thought that he wanted to exceed, he would have built a Vimana which is at least more than that particular height. But what he did is, he made a change and ensured that the height of the Vimana remains as about 160 feet only. So that is one thing which he did. He never tried to exceed what his father achieved. The second aspect is the Vimana of Tanjavur temple is typical pyramid structure. Right from the bottom all the way up to the top, you will see it actually tapering off like a pyramid. But here in Gangaikonda Cholapuram, the first three layers of the Vimana are square in nature, right? And then it made as the 8-faced one for 2-3 stories, and then it actually tapers off all the way up. So that is a very significant difference in terms of the construction of a Vimana, which you will see in Gangaikonda Chola. What actually made is, compared to the straight pyramidal structure of the Tanjavur Brihadiswara temple, the Gangaikonda Cholapuram temple is in fact sort of round in shape as it actually goes up in the top, which is why many people say that the Gangaikonda Cholapuram Vimanam is actually a feminine type of Vimana compared to what you maybe the masculine type of Vimana you will see in the Tanjavur. If you look at the way the Vimana is constructed right from the bottom, there is this basement which is called as Upapita. Then there is a base which is called as Adhisthana. Then the wall of the Vimana will come called as Biti. Then the roof cornice, which is Prastara. And then the Hara, which is basically like a garland surrounding the Vimana. Then the stories of the Vimana, which will come called as Tala. And then the Griva, which is basically the neck of the Vimana. Then the Shikara. And then the top, you will see the Stuti. This is how the Vimana rises right from the ground all the way up using these 9 different parts of the Vimana structure. So you will see that brilliantly carved out and architecturally designed Vimana in the Gangaikonda Cholapuram also. Now, outside the sanctum, if you look at from outside, it look as if there is a single wall outside, which actually goes all the way up to the top. But if you look at from the sanctum, there is always an inner wall, which is surrounding the sanctum. And then there is this outer wall, which you will see from outside. So there is a gap, there is a passage in between these two, which is called as Santara. Now, what he has done in Gangaikonda Cholapuram is, he had put 3 stories. I mentioned these 3 stories are like a square in nature. So there are 3 Santara passages in Gangaikonda Cholapuram, as you see in the picture. On the top passage, you will see sort of tapers down, and then both the inner and outer walls converge and then start moving as a tapering image all the way up to the Shikara. So this is how the structure was designed in Gangaikonda Cholapuram. In Tanjavur, you see the Sandara passages have the Natya Karanas, the sculptures of various dance poses. And it also has brilliant Chola murals on the Sandara passage. But in Gangaikonda Cholapuram, you will never see any sculptures. It doesn't have any paintings as well, like what you see. The reasons are quite unknown. Okay, so this is how the entire Vimana is structured. Now we will go into the sanctum. The sanctum has one of the biggest Sivalingas in Asia, as they say, about 13 feet high, right from the bottom. The Shivalinga, if you look at the Bana of the Shivalinga, that is at the bottom, it is square. Then you will have an 8-faced middle part, and the top part is a cylindrical part. So it actually symbolizes the Mummurtis, the Brahma, Vishnu, and then Shiva on the same Bana of the Lingam. And that is the concept of having a linga like that. Okay, so that's what the Agama says. From the Shivalinga all the way up to the top, you will see total halo, right? The entire space inside the Vimana is empty all the way up to the Shikara. So this is again to show the principle of Parashiva, that the Shiva is actually the entire space. The God occupied the entire space, which is again in the principle of Makutakama. You will see that in the Tanjavur temple. The same principle was used by Rajendra in the Gangaikonda Cholapuram also. That their gurus were sort of come from the same lineage. Rajaraja's guru was Isana Sivacharya, and Rajendra's guru was Sarvasiva Pandita. Both of them follow the same school. And it's no surprise that they followed Makutakama in both the places. And based on that, Agama only, the Gangaikonda Cholapuram was designed. But the beauty is that if you start making a straight line from the center of the Bana of the Linga all the way up in a 90 degrees way, it will go to the center of the stuti in the top, right? Straight line without any issues. So that is again the kind of a geometrical precision in which the pradishta of the linga is done inside the sanctum. Okay, so I think that is another important point to note down, is that there is absolutely very clear method of mathematical calculations were made by the sculptors while making this temple of Gangaikonda Chola. Okay, Now, if you come out of this sanctum and then go on the right side, you will see this Simmakeni, which is made by the Udayar Palayam Jamindar. On the belly of the line, there were steps to go down all the way into the well, where you can fetch water and then bring it for the Abhisheka of the lingam. That was the practice. And there is an inscription which is written in Tamil and Telugu, which is said that Kalaktal Thola Udayar Dhanmam. Dhanmam is basically a grand. So the Udayar Palayam Jamindar has done the grand, is what it is written in the inscription of the Simmakeni. Okay, so that is that. And besides Simmakeni, there is a shrine for Mahishasuramardini, which is again a later addition, not done during the Cholas time. That's what they say. It's a very small shrine which has a Mahishasuramardini deity inside that. Now, this is basically what we see as part of the temple. Now, the beauty of this temple lies in a number of sculptures, which is even now you can see in the various parts of the temple, right? You will start with the Dwarapalakas. Now you see the Dwarapalakas here. This is basically similar to what you see in Tanjavur Brigadiswarar Temple. Obviously, they are from a same group of sculptors, so you will not see much of a difference. Here also the Dwarapalaka is very brilliantly done, showing a symbol saying that the god is so big, and then the right hand gives a warning sign that you need to be aware that the shrine inside has a great god. At the bottom of the Dwarapalaka, on the rising right leg, you will see the similar sculpture which you see in Tanjavur also, where a snake catches a elephant. Now, elephant is so big. Now, if a snake need to catch that elephant, how big that snake would be? And if it actually in the size of a finger of the leg of a Dwarapalaka, how big the Dwarapalaka would be? And the Dwarapalaka, when he says that the god is so big, using that particular mudra of Viswamaya, then you will see how big is the god. I think that is a symbolic representation of how big is the god, which is depicted in the Brilliance sculpture of this Dwarapalaka, which you will see in Gangaikonda Cholapuram. This is in fact the side passage or the side steps. Once you come out of the sanctum, there are two passages on the left and right hand side. You will see this particular Dwarapalaka. The other sculpture of interest is the Nattana Ganapati sculpture. Now, this is a dancing Ganapati, which you will see in many of the temple, but it is very beautifully made with a number of ganas, Bhuta ganas around the Ganapati, and then they were playing various drums and music so that the Ganapati dances. So it is very, very interesting to see Ganapati in the dancing pose in one of the koshta of a Shiva temple. And that is what you see in the Gangaikonda Cholapuram also. So that is the Ganapati sculpture. Now we will come to another important sculpture, which is of Gajalakshmi. Now, keeping Gajalakshmi in temple is considered as auspicious. So many of the temples you will see a Gajalakshmi, and Gangaikonda Cholapuram is no different. But what you see here is the Gajalakshmi with lotus on both hands, seated in a lotus flower, which is again not very unique. But you will have only two hands of Gajalakshmi in Gangaikonda Cholapuram. Normally, it is usual to have four hands of Lakshmi in many temples, but here you will see the Lakshmi only with the two hands, with the both hands holding lotus. What is there interesting? What is interesting in this is that you will see two elephants on the sides, on the top, with and pouring water. Only the front part of the elephant is visible, and the back part of it actually goes into clouds, or sort of hides into the clouds. So that's what the sculptor who actually carved out this vigraha has done. Now, what is the symbolism here? He says that the clouds which need to bring rain, and the rain bring prosperity, and that is Lakshmi being a goddess of prosperity, in fact lives with the rain. So more the rain you get, the prosperity is going to get more. Chola country being a very fertile land, they were looking at rains, right? So rains are very, very important. is what the Silpi here is trying to convey by putting the elephant sort of hiding into the clouds, or elephant coming out of the emerging out of the clouds, right? So that is what is being depicted in this particular sculpture. Very beautiful one. This is the Gajalakshmi Vigraha. And another beautiful Vigraha, as you see here, is the Ardhanarishwara. Ardhanarishwara depicts the male and female part, the Shiva and the Shakti part in a single Vigraha, as you see here. Here, the Ardhanarishwara in Gangaikonda Cholapuram is in fact depicted as one who is actually standing besides the Rishabha. Shiva's right hand was leaning on the head of the Rishabha, as you see. And the smile of the Ardhanarishwara is absolutely pleasing, as you see here. The right upper hand of Shiva is carrying the axe, the Malu. So if you see the Shakti, she is having the Keshabandha in the top, while Shiva is having the Jatamukura. Both the things are very finely sculpted in the beautiful sculpture of the Ardhanarishwara. So this is another important and interesting sculpture you will see in Gangaikonda Cholapuram. Then there is another one called as Harihara. Now what you see in the Ardhanarishwara is Shiva and Shakti. In the Harihara sculpture, Vigraha, you will see that Shiva and Vishnu are together in a single Vigraha. The right hand side is Shiva and the left hand side is Vishnu. Now Shiva is carrying the axe as usual, and the Vishnu is carrying the Shankha, as you see. So this is another beautiful Vigraha, which in fact establishes that there is this Shiva and Vaishnava unity even at that time. There were a lot of speculations that the Cholas were predominantly Shaivas and they don't like Vaishnavite sect. But the Harihara Vigraha, in fact, sort of proved that that was all false. And they were worshipping both Shiva and Vishnu and other gods of Sanatana together, and there was no discrimination together. So this Harihara is another Vigraha which actually evidences that, beautifully carved out in one of the walls of the Gangaikonda Cholapuram. The beautiful Natarajas you will see in any Shiva temple in Tamil Nadu is actually from the Gangaikonda Cholapuram. There was this verse of Saint Tirunavukar, it says that Kunitha Purvamum Kovai Chavvayil Kumil Sirit. Smile in the Kovai Chavvai is actually in the mouth, the red mouth of Lord Shiva is very enchanting. So the kind of smile you see in Shiva or Nataraja is very well depicted in this Gangaikonda Cholapuram Nataraja Vigraha, which is actually a very beautiful panel. It is not only Nataraja, what you see in these sides is actually very, very interesting. In the panel, let us look at the panel first, right? The top of the panel, you will see Surya on the left and then Chandra on the right, were actually enjoying the dance of Shiva. And then in the left hand side, you will see both Ganesha and Muruga in their respective vahanas. Ganesha on the top of mouse and Muruga on the top of peacock. They were also watching the dance of Lord Shiva. Coming into the bottom part, you will see the Adhigara Nandi playing an instrument called as Kudamura. Kudamura is one unique instrument played in this part of the world during the dance of Lord Shiva. So you can see that Adhigara Nandi playing that Kudamura. On the right hand side, you will see Parvati leaning on the Rishabha and looking at the dance very pleasantly. She is carrying a Nilodbhava flower on the right hand side. Even the Rishabha, in fact, turns its head and then looks at the beautiful dance of Lord Shiva. So this is what you will see in the surrounding panels. In the center, you will see Lord Shiva and you will see a banyan tree in the background, and his jada and all sort of moving because he is actually dancing. His top right hand is giving an Abhaya Mudra, and he is carrying a Damuru again on the one of the hands in the right. On the left hand, he is having the fire, and the other left hand is actually in the mudra called as Gajahasta. It is like an elephant kind of a mudra, which is like this. He is actually dancing on top of a demon called as Muyalaka, and the expression of the Muyalaka, the demon, is also very, very cute, as you see in the picture. And beside Shiva, you will see Kali, who is actually dancing. You know that the entire dance of Shiva or Nataraja happened because there used to be a competition between Kali and Shiva as to who's the best dancer. So, which is why you'll see Kali is dancing and Shiva is dancing. And finally, Shiva took that Urdhva Tandava, putting his one leg all the way into the top, which Kali couldn't do it, and then she lost. So that there goes the legend. So here also, the Kali is seen dancing very ferociously besides Shiva. So in the sculpture, the entire Vigraha looks as a single one. The one below the knees of Nataraja were broken by the invaders, unfortunately. So they were all made up currently. Even now, when with that particular breaking of the Vigraha, it looks very, very beautiful as you see it. If you look at the panel below, you will see the Budaganas who are playing various instruments. And that leftmost part, you will see Karekalammayar, who wanted to witness this celestial dance. Right, she is actually in the panel. The Karekalammayar on the just below the left leg of Lord Shiva. Other important sculpture, as you see, is the Gangadhara. Now, Gangadhara is Shiva bringing Ganges due to the penance of Bhagirath. We know that particular story. So here in the panel, as you see it, on the right-hand side, you will see Bhagirath doing the penance, putting both his hands up, praying to the Shiva that he need to bring Ganges to the earth. So Shiva was pleased with the penance, and then he tried to bring Ganges from the heavens, and he Ganges, who's coming in a very, very faster way all the way to the earth into one of his jata. So you will see that he is having that jata in the right hand, and then trying to capture or catch Ganga, who's coming all the way from the heavens. Now Parvati is very unhappy that Shiva is actually going towards Ganga, and Shiva is in fact trying to pacify here. So that's what you will see here, that he is trying to pacify Parvati, saying while the Ganges is coming all the way from the heavens. This is very well depicted in this particular sculpture. Now this is another beautiful one, which is called as Kalakala Murti. The Kalakala Murti is basically coming from a story of a Markandeya. So when Markandeya was Markandeya's father, father and mother, they were not having a child, and then they prayed to Lord Shiva. Then the boon was given that either you have an unintelligent child who will live longer, or a very intelligent child who will live only for 16 years. So they agreed that we are fine with the child who is intelligent but lives only for 16 years. But once the child reaches 16 years, they were worried that they will lose him. So they tell Markandeya, who is their son, about the entire background. So Markandeya goes and then prays to Lord Shiva. And then the Yama who came to capture the life of Markandeya tried to put his rope on him. But unfortunately, because Markandeya was actually embracing the Shivalinga, it fall on the Shiva also. So Shiva got enraged, and then he comes out of the Shivalinga and then tried to kill the Yama, because he was actually trying to capture the life of a true devotee like Markandeya. So that is basically the background of the story of Kalakala Murti. And here, a very ferocious form of Shiva is in fact seen here, with the Yama or the fallen down and then sort of hit by Lord Shiva. That is one of the important murtis which you will not normally see in many of those Shiva shrines. So that is what is actually seen here. The next important murti you will see, or you are seeing on the screen, is the Kama Dahana murti. Now the Kama Dahana is basically happened when Shiva was doing a very hot penance, and Parvati was born to Himavan. Now, during that time, the Devas were troubled by Asuras, including Shurapadmasura. So, they were trying to find out a way of coming out of this torturous period. They go and pray Brahma. Brahma said that a Kumara who is born to Shiva and Parvati will only kill that demon. Now, how do you get Shiva married when he was actually doing a very hot penance? So they thought that Manmada, who is the god of love, to be sent to Shiva, and then let him actually use his arrows, the banas, to wake up Shiva from the penance and then get him married to Parvati. That was their plan. So they tried to send Manmada, who refuses that initially, and then finally they convince him and then send him. And Manmada was accompanied by Radhi, who was his wife. So both of them go to Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva is again doing a penance, and he was trying to hit him with an arrow. The first arrow hit Shiva, so he was very, very enraged. He opens his third eye and then burns Manmada to ashes. And then Radhi Devi sort of prays to Shiva, saying that the background of the entire story she tells Shiva, and then Shiva resurrects Manmada with the promise that he will be visible only to Radhi Devi. So that was the basic story. And here you will see that the Kamadagana Kamadhana Murti here. On the top, you will see that again the top of the panel, you will see a person sending an arrow, which is none other than Manmada. And again, what happens is Shiva opens his eyes and then kills him. That is depicted in the second part. The third part, you will see Radhi Devi behind the Manmada, and then the Shiva here, the center, holding a stick of fire on the left hand side, and then showing his right hand finger at Manmada. Hey, you are trying to disturb my penance, kind of a look is what you see in Shiva's face. You will see his third eye also open in this particular sculpture. And then on the bottom right, you will see both Radhi and Manmada praying to the god. Obviously, after the curses of taken off. So another beautiful sculpture which is there in one of the panels of the Gangaikonda Cholapuram. Now we will come to the most important panel of Gangaikonda Cholapuram, which is the Sandesa Anugraha Murti. There is a story behind that. I will tell you a background of what is this. There was an individual called as Visharachanna, who is a very strong devotee of Shiva, who's basically praying to the Lord every day. And he saw that the cows actually pour milk into a particular place, and then he see a Sivalinga over there. He was quite pleased that the cows voluntarily go and then pour milk and then do Abhisheka to Lord Shiva. So he brings all the cows over there and then perform this ritual every day. But people who are not seeing milk from the cows were very angry that what's happening here, and then they try to find out what's happening, and they eventually find that Visharachanna is actually taking the cows to pour milk on Lord Shiva, which is actually the reason why they are not getting the milk. So they go and then tell Visharachanna's father, hey, this is what your son is doing. So his father was enraged. He tries to find out what is the truth. And like the others saw, he also saw that the cows come and then pour milk on the Shivalinga. So he was so angry that he goes and then kicks the Shivalinga. Visharachanna was actually praying to Shiva during that time, and he couldn't stand the fact that his father went and then desecrated the Shivalinga. So he takes a stick which is next to him, and by God's grace, that is becoming an axe, and then he actually cuts off his father's legs and kills him, in fact. So Lord Shiva appears before him and then says that your Shiva Bhakti is actually sort of made even your father a victim of yours. So I'll be your father going forward. I'll give you the name of Sandeswara. I'll give you an Ishwara name as well. And then he actually gives that Kondrai Malai, one of the flowers, and then puts it on his head. So that is the beautiful history of Visharachanna, which is there in the Periya Purana. It depicts the life of the 63 Saiva saints. Now here Rajendra tried to depict that brilliantly in this panel. And many people think that this is actually Shiva crowning Rajendra Chola by mistake, but it was not actually true. It was the crowning or crowning of Sandeswara, giving that Ishwara title to Sandeswara is actually depicted, which is why it is called as Sandeswara Anugraha Murti. There were Sandeswara Anugraha Murtis in many temples earlier as well. including the Pullamangai temple of Parandaka Chola. But this particular Vigraha is actually takes the story to a greater level. The kind of precision and the features which is depicted here is phenomenal. As you see in the panel, you will see that there are rishis in the top side of both the side of the Sandeshana Brahmurti. And then below you will see the cows actually. The right hand side middle part, you will see the cow comes and then pours milk on the Shivalingam. The right hand side bottom, you will see the father of Visharasanma comes and then tries to desecrate Shivalingam. And on the left hand side, you will see, in fact, Sandeshwara, who was Visharasanma, kills his father on the bottom left hand side here. So the entire story of Sandeshwara is depicted well here. And in the middle, you will see Shiva and Parvati looking straight, while Shiva is actually turning on the side, put his left hand on the head of Sandeshwara, then tries to put the Kundrai Malaya around him. So this is the depiction of a Chandeshwara Anugraha Murti. And probably Rajendra would have thought that he's like Chandeshwara, who wanted to be at the feet of Lord Shiva. But actually, this is not actually Rajendra Chola, as many would say. Okay. Now, finally, what you see is the sculpture of Rajendra Chola here. Very small one on top of one of the panels. He's just praying Sivalinga. So the humbleness of the emperor is very clearly depicted. He built such a big temple with so much of huge sculptures. But here he is. He's not built a sila for him, but put him in a very small panel, just sitting and then praying Lord Shiva all alone. That's the greatness of Rajendra Chola. It's a living temple currently. The ASI has restored it. It's an UNESCO heritage site. But as I said, many part of this temple is lost, but still the Lord Shiva is very much there, who's actually blessing devotees day in, day out. Coming to the inscriptions, as I said, many of the inscriptions are sort of demolished now. There is only one inscription of Rajendra Chola, which is of importance. It is about 216 lines inscription, which is there in the temple, which in fact talks about all the donations, right from Rajendra Chola's time to his son Rajaraja Chola, and then his brother's donation and his own donations, everything towards the Nitya Pujas of the temple, various offerings made to the god, and then the land donations made to the temple, the kind of areas where the lands of the temples were associated. Everything is very clearly documented in the 216 lines long Rajendra Chola inscription, which is perhaps the oldest of the inscriptions you see in the temple. There is another inscription of Kulothunga I, which actually starts with the Prasasti of the Kulothunga. But interestingly, it has got about 4 slokas, which has the Gagadwala's plates. Gagadwala were one of the dynasties ruling in the North India. And the slokas which from their own Prasasti, which is found in their copper plates, which is actually inscribed in Gangaikonda Cholapuram, which means that they both have some sort of a linkage. Gahadwalas actually were sun god worshipping, and interestingly, Kulothunga Chola I built a temple for sun god, Suryanar temple in the Chola Desam. So there is some sort of a linkage, and the inscription here refers to the Govinda Chandra, one of the kings of the Gahadwala dynasty. Okay, so that is another interesting inscription which you will find in Gangaikonda Cholapuram. And there are a number of Pandya inscription. There is an inscription of Kulasekara Pandya. There is an inscription of Vikrama Pandya. Jadavarman Sundara Pandya made a number of grants, including land grants towards the puja of the temple. Then there were inscription of Vijayanagara kings. Prabhuda Devaraya's inscription is there, which in fact revives most of the pujas which were happening in the temple, but was stopped during the later point of time. That inscription was also there in the temple. So ideally, if we can, if those parts which were not demolished for building the dam, we could have had more of these inscriptions, which could have actually told a totally different story about the temple and the history. But nevertheless, this is one of the architectural and engineering marvels of Cholas, and their power of building such a great temple in a capital which is also newly found. I think with that, thank you very much, ATHARVA Forum, for giving me another opportunity to talk to you on the great temples of Chola. I hope I'll meet you again with the third part with another temple and another history of that temple. Thank you.